morning. We have a wonderful day here today, right? All right, let's all stand and worship the Lord this morning. We're going to sing about our risen Savior, because he lives. Amen. Let's continue in worship with the song, How Great Is Our God. Splendor of the King. continue in worship with praising our Lord, the majesty of our Lord, the King.
Amen. Please be seated. Thank you for being with us this morning. Are you ready to drink from a fire hydrant? Yeah, I bet you are. Well, we are delighted to see you. Hey, kids, wait. Don't go. Next Sunday, when you show up at 10 o'clock, go straight to the cafe. Next Sunday, the kids service, both hours for kids next week. The elementary program will be next door in the cafe. We've got Dave Bisbee with us from, I knew I was going to say that. Genesis Apologetics. I'm sorry, I knew the wrong name was going to come out. Genesis Apologetics right here in Northern California from Sacramento. And Dave just recently retired. He's got to be a happy man, right? From SMUD, 30 years with SMUD for energy efficiency. Bigger than that, though, he's the vice president of Genesis Apologetics, and you are going to hear about today some incredible stuff about defending your faith, apologetics with creation, and then the second hour we're going to be in here, the same room, don't go anywhere, coffee will be provided in between, and all about dinosaurs, right? And so next week, Dave will be back, and he'll be doing similar messages for the kids, 10 and 11, next door in the cafe building. And so we're delighted to have you. Thanks for giving up your weekend for us, and we are thrilled about what you're going to share with us.
Very much. Whoops. Psych! All right, well, just first of all, can you hear me? Is the microphone on? We doing well? In the back? Yes? Okay. So first of all, I guarantee you that the kids are going to have a lot more fun next week than we are, but that's just the way it goes. That's what it's all about, being a kid. So today we're going to start by looking at top 10 evidence for biblical creation. And, you know, I feel a little awkward about that title because these are 10, but there are other ones out there. But let's get started. So first of all, who are we? How many have heard of Genesis Apologetics? Okay, a few of you. So about 7 years ago, God put it on my heart to leave the church that I was teaching as a Sunday school volunteer and start a creation ministry. And I'm like, Lord, are you crazy? You know, that's kind of controversial. People go after you for that. I don't know if I want to do that. But he said, Dave, I got this. So again, we formed a 501(c) nonprofit. And our main focus is to try to equip students and their parents so that they stand strong on their faith and on the Bible. There's this conception out there that you have to choose between science and the Bible, and we want to show that is not true. Okay, so important thing is we're not inventing new stuff or new ideas. We are actually partners and colleagues with a lot of different ones, okay? But we have 4 different areas. The first is yours truly gets the pleasure of going around Northern California and speaking at Christian schools. And I got to tell you, that is my absolute favorite. I got to do that twice this week. Now that I'm not working anymore, I'm retired, I'm going to amp that up and try to do as many as these old bones will do. So we also do local church presentations like this one and mini conferences. We have an annual conference in Sacramento. Last year was at William Jessup University, but we had to do it virtual because of COVID. But we tend to do that. And then, but here is where the Lord has really blessed our efforts, is social media. So how many of you have a teenager? How many of you know a teenager? How many people know somebody that is connected to that phone 24/7, 365? Okay, that's where we found out most of the target audience that we're trying to help, that's where they hang out. So we've gone to YouTube, we've gone to smartphone apps and things like that to communicate. And the Lord has blessed us with over 110,000 subscribers, so all the glory goes to Him. All right, so let's get into our message. So let's start with, I like to start with the Bible. This is a church. So God said something very interesting in Romans. And He was talking about, I'm going to skip down a little bit. So for the sense of the creation of the world, His invisible attributes are, read that with me, clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. So even in His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are what? That's a pretty strong statement. So God is saying, hey, look, when you look out at creation and you see the things that I have done, the next thing you should do is look up at me. So God goes on to say, and this gets even stronger, because although they knew God, they did not glorify Him as God, nor were they thankful, but became futile in their thoughts. And their foolish hearts were darkened. That's pretty strong words. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like the corruptible man, and get this, birds and four-footed creatures and creeping things. What does that last phrase sound like? It's what is called evolution. The idea that God didn't create everything, that everything created itself and over time has evolved into all the different life forms we see. And God calls this foolishness, and I'm going to, first of all, I get really passionate about this, so if I start jumping up and down or whatever, just bear with me. It is Baptist though, right? We can do that here? Okay, good. So some of the church is a little uptight, got to wear the tie and all that. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example, and I don't mean to be mean or anything, but I just want to show you some of the foolishness that's going on out there, okay? According to some of the latest studies, this is your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa. His name is Schrödinger. Great. I evolved from a mouse with big teeth, right? So, but seriously, they are teaching this to our children, and they're doing it in places like the Smithsonian Natural Museum History. They have this shrine, I call it, dedicated to the ancestor of all mammals, okay? So, and you think I'm kidding? This is a gold-plated statue of supposedly the ancestor for all mammals. Now, right off the bat, how does that grab you? Does that sound plausible or does that sound kind of silly? It sounds kind of silly to me, okay? Because when we get into it and we look around at what God said, we know that we can trust him. So let's get rid of that. And our sound's not on yet, but anyway. So the question is, okay, so there's a lot of silly ideas about where we came from and that we evolved from things, but is there any evidence for creation? So for the next for the next 37 minutes, we're going to go through some of our favorites, all right? So evidence number one, Earth is obviously designed for life. Now, when you look at what God said in Isaiah, he said, "For thus saith the Lord who created the heavens, who is God, who formed the earth and made it, who has established it, who did not create it in vain, who formed it to be inhabited." All right? I am the Lord, and there is no other. So one of the things right after God created the earth, he put an atmosphere for us. Is atmosphere important? Yeah, okay, we kind of like be dead without it. We can breathe. Lately, the atmosphere in Sacramento has been dreadful because of all the fires. Our AQI was 150. A couple weeks ago, it was, believe it or not, 500. So it was basically, but it's atmosphere, it's there. But God put that there to keep us warm and to give us air to breathe and to protect us from meteorites. And if that wasn't enough, God made sure that we had a magnetic field, that the earth generates its own magnetic field to make sure that the radiation coming from the sun doesn't fry us and barbecue us. A couple facts about the sun. Our sun is very interesting. It is just the right distance. We are just the right distance from the sun at about 93 million miles. If we were closer, it would be too hot. If we were further away, it would be too cold to support life on Earth. Another couple interesting things. It's the ideal type of star. There are lots and lots of stars out there. But this one is ideal because it provides just the right amount of energy, and it's very stable. A lot of the stars that are out there are very unstable. Now, have you ever heard in the news that the reason your cell phone's not working today is because of a solar flare? Or radios or whatnot? Okay, it's getting better with technology, but that used to be a big thing to where it affected things. But our sun is stable compared to some of the really crazy ones that we see. And what about that moon? Now, I know why God created the moon. What I don't know is why he created cats. Quick story, okay? So I have a routine in my office at home. So I usually go and I turn on all the computers and all the electronics and everything, and then I sit back in my chair and start my day, right? Unbeknownst to me, my cat, named Tigger, decided to sit in my chair while I was turning everything on. Have you ever sat on a cat? I don't recommend it at all. She screamed, I screamed, the chair fell over backwards, I hit my head on the bookcase and got all my wonderful creation materials rained down on my head. The cat looks at me and goes, "Huh," and just kind of walks out, right? My loving wife of 33 years goes by and goes, "Really, Dave? Really? You just got taken out by a cat." Anyway, I'm sorry, I got lost a little rabbit trail. So the moon actually plays a really important role too. The gravitational pull of the moon creates the tides so that the ocean stays mixed up to support life. So God has carefully orchestrated all these different things on earth for life, for the life that he created for us and all the amazing animals for us to enjoy. Okay. Evidence number 2, large creatures like dinosaurs exhibit amazing design. All right, so just to give you an idea how big some of these things are, this man is standing next to a replica of a fossil that was found. He's putting his hand on what would be a shin bone, so to speak. Absolutely massive creatures, okay? So you can go to museums and you can see the displays that they have, but one thing that's kind of interesting, and I teach the kids this a lot, is when you look at these massive creatures, they're really heavy and they'd have to have special features to be able to move, or else why they just couldn't move around. So right off the bat, the most obvious is if you look at the tail and if you look at the neck, what are they doing? They're counterbalancing each other. Do we still have seesaws on the playgrounds? When I grew up, we had seesaws, teeter-totters, okay? The idea is that tail helps counterbalance. One thing that's very interesting about the tails, when I was a kid, they used to show the pictures of all the tails dragging on the ground. That's not what they did, because they're not finding drag marks. They're finding footprints, but no drag marks. So dinosaurs like this sauropod would actually hold their tail upright, and it would act as a counterbalance for their head. And then all of this, of course, is balanced on these massive legs. And guess what? We thought that that was such a cool idea that we used it for suspension bridges, because it works. Same basic idea there. And cranes. We looked at the structure that they have for those, and we used cranes. We designed the cranes with the same type of structure to be able to lift heavy loads. So God thought of it first. We just ripped it off and patented it, okay? And then when you look at these neck bones, they're absolutely amazing. Do you see those where the arrow is flashing? Those are called double chevron bones. And what they did is they provided connection points for the dinosaur, for the tendons and the muscles and everything, and gave a pathway for the air and the food pipe to go down the neck. And it had to be just right, because if it's too heavy, he can't lift it. If it's too flimsy, it snaps off and the guy dies, okay? So God carefully engineered this creature to be able to survive. So to stop and think about that suspension bridge. Did a suspension bridge create itself? Of course not, that's silly. But why do we then say, well, the dinosaur created itself? So people are kind of inconsistent in that we'll look at really cool technology and say, wow, somebody really smart made that. But when we look at creation, they'll say, oh, it created itself. That's why I believe Romans says it's foolishness to not believe in God when you look at it. All right. Another interesting design feature is that the larger vertebrae, you can see how big that backbone is. They were actually filled with 90% air volume. So what you have are very strong structures that don't weigh a lot so that he can move his neck around. I think that's amazing. I really do. All right, and not to leave out the other end of the spectrum, small creatures like bees exhibit amazing design. How many of you like bees? How many have been stung by bees? How many ever drank a soda that had a bee in it and he got you on the, yeah, okay, brother, me, you, and I both. Ouch! So, lesson learned, watch your soda when you're out and about. Don't just take a swig. Anyway, I forgive them. They're part of God's design. So bees are absolutely amazing, okay? And one of the things that is so interesting is when they build their hives or their honeycombs, they actually do that so that it's ventilated and maintains uniform temperature. Where'd they get that idea? I don't know, did they just come up with that, or did God program them with things like this, okay? And the bees themselves, I know that's kind of a busy picture, it's a lot bigger up there, that's good. The bees themselves, the honeybees, are actually pollen collecting machines. I mean, they are amazing if you look at some of the features they have, including one of my favorites here on the lower right. They have on their leg a special antenna cleaning notch. They can reach up and go and clean that antenna. So all of these features just beg design. They just shout design. He's also got, like I said, all these different features, but my favorite about this guy is they've done studies So you ever seen pictures of bees kind of swarming around? It looks like they're dancing. Some of them are dancing. And what they're doing is they're telling the others where the food source is. That's amazing to me. By the structure of the way that they're moving their bodies and dancing, they're using the sun as a reference, and they're telling the other bees where to get the food. Hey, Joe, McDonald's is over there, man. So again, how did these creatures do this? What gave them the intelligence to do that? Is it just something that nature invented? I don't think so. Is there a better plan for bees? Can we build something better? Not even close. All right, number 4. Humans display amazing design with no leftovers. So in Psalms it says, "For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb." Humans are absolutely amazing. Now what they used to teach in school is that we have all these leftover parts from evolution. They call them vestigial structures. How many have heard of that? Or vestigial organs? And at one time they said there are 180 things that we have that we no longer use because they're left over from evolution. Well, guess what? Further studies have indicated that there are purposes for every single one that they named. How many were told that the appendix we don't need it anymore? Not true. It's part of our immune system when we're very young. And things like that modern scientific studies are now showing. What about tonsils? How many had their tonsils removed? Oh, you don't need those. It used to be just routine to remove the tonsils. We now know that they're important. So everything has a function. All right. And if you've ever thought about this, think about a simple thing like blood clotting. So to be able to clot blood, the body has to sense there's a problem, and it has to trigger this enormous chain of reactions and processes to constrict the blood and then repair the hole. Otherwise, we would bleed to death. Now let's think about this. If it totally shuts down the blood flow, what happens? The tissue dies. Mission failed. If it doesn't shut it down enough, what happens? The creature bleeds out and we die. Or people, creatures, all the same process. I've seen a video on this, and I got to tell you, it went right over my head because there's all these different terms. But blood clotting is one of the things that evolutionists go, we have no idea how that evolved because it is so incredibly complicated. All right. Told you we were going to go fast. Number 5, the biblical flood aligns with geology and the fossil record, much to the surprise of a lot of people. So how many went to Sunday school and saw a picture like this? And you can sing the song, I won't sing, I'll spare you. Well, maybe I will. It rained for 40 daisies, right? That's what we grew up with. So a lot of us grew up with that image in our mind. And so when it comes to when we grow up and when we start hearing all these objections about the flood, that it wasn't possible, it's largely due to this. So let's get rid of that. So what the latest theories are, in fact, we're in a process of making yet another movie about flood geology on our website, is that, who's heard of plate tectonics, continental drift? Okay, the idea that all the continents separated over eons of time. The latest creation model and theory is that, yes, the continents did split apart, but it happened during the flood year. And there's all kinds of evidence. I'm going to show you a video, lots of animation and whatnot. The only thing I really want to accomplish with this is to kind of change your perception of what the flood was really like, okay? So let's take a look at this. just a moment, you're going to hear the narrator kick in.
Something shoves the water over the tops of even the high lands from that ancient world. The newly forming ocean floor offshore is so hot that it starts very thick, pushing up the ocean waters from beneath. Sea level rises dramatically. Molten magma rises and fills the widening gaps, pushing the mid-ocean ridges wider. The distant colder ocean floor shoves against the continents, then slides beneath them like giant conveyor belts, deep beneath the earth in some places. Rather than the conventional model that has the seafloors spreading slowly, this runaway subduction actually happened quickly, moving at about 5 miles per hour due to the heat caused by the friction and pressure of the rapidly subducting plates. As the diving ocean floor plates subduct under the land, they push down the continental edges and then release them, creating tsunami cycles that blanket the continents. Just how tsunamis happen today, only more intense and frequent. For example, the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Japan, and the 4th largest in history, was a magnitude 9.1 earthquake that occurred in 2011. This earthquake was caused by an undersea megathrust about 45 miles east of the Japanese coast. At the center, there was a 160-foot slip between the overriding plate that was part of Japan and the underlying Pacific plate. The sea bottom rose about 23 feet when the fault unlocked, and the resulting earthquake triggered a devastating tsunami that was 133 feet above sea level and traveled inland for 6 miles. The tsunamis occurring during the flood, however, were different, much different. With the ocean ridge bursting open rapidly and pushing the ocean floor under land continents on a worldwide scale, tsunamis were happening in cycles, several every hour, and with long stretches of subduction zones active at the same time. The incoming phase of a tsunami has a much higher speed and is highly turbulent, which keeps the sediment in suspension, but it leaves behind layers of sediment as it slows down in the retreating phase. This cycle repeats several times every hour during the 150-day inundation stage of the flood, first entombing the shallow marine life, followed by land creatures in different habitats and elevations, leaving behind what we see today in the fossil record. These types of tsunamis have even occurred in recent history, such as the tsunami caused by slipping ocean plates that hit the coast of Washington in 1700 and left behind multiple layers representing each wave of the tsunami. 104 describes the mountains being raised at the end of the flood and the waters draining down valleys and off the emerging new land surfaces. The seafloor rifting process and the resulting mountain forming process explains why sea creatures are found on mountaintops all over the world, high above current sea levels. For the remaining 220 days of the flood, the water recedes from the earth and it dries out, allowing time for Earth to be replenished with vegetation for the animals to eat when they eventually come off the ark. This year-long catastrophe left behind a vast number of proofs that, quite frankly, make its occurrence obvious.
All right, so rather than that gentle rainstorm that many of us were brought up believing in, when God decided, what was the purpose of the flood? The purpose of the flood was to wipe out everything that was not on the ark, all the land creatures and all the people, right? When God does something, he doesn't mess around. I mean, it was beyond our comprehension in terms of the power of the things that went on. Now, some of the other current theories is that asteroids actually hit the earth maybe to trigger the flood, and during the flood. And they can tell by the layers that they hit where they can kind of predict about when it hit the earth. So the flood was beyond our imagination in terms of the power and scope of it. And that's what, you want proof that it's recent. They've done different image scans, and what they've found is that some of the continental plates that are down below, deep in the earth, are relatively cool compared to the surrounding materials. So what does that mean? It means it hasn't been there that long, and that it went down there very quickly, because if it had been down there for millions and millions of years, it would be warm by now, and they can actually image that stuff. All right, that's your geology lesson for today. Here is the evidence. So when we look at the fossil record, we're going to talk a lot more about this during the second session. What do we see in the fossil record? We see these massive fossil graveyards to where all the animals have been smashed up and put together like goulash, just washed down there, right? That's a fun word, goulash, okay? So they've all been mixed together, so when the scientists are unearthing these, you got all kinds of animals mixed together. You got to be very careful to excavate them and try to put them together. Skeletons, complete skeletons, are very rare, by the way. There's not that many. Usually it's just a big busted pile. Now, when you do find skeletons, like this dinosaur, they often are in what's called the death pose. Now, I don't tell the kids that. Okay, that's icky. But what happened is that these guys drowned. That's why their head is arched back and they were encased in mud. Okay, so something happened to them that totally inundated them. And there are a lot of those. It's not just one or two. All right, and then we have evidence that whatever happened was rapid. Hopefully you can tell what that is from the picture. That is a fish eating a fish that was buried in mud and fossilized. So it's not like this guy just laid down one day and then, many years of just dust came over him. Something big and powerful came up and just wiped him out. And then finally, we have seashells on the top of the tallest mountains. Now those, you can see from the scale, those are about 2.5, 3 feet in diameter. So things were a little bit bigger before the flood, right? Can you imagine? Man, get pearl out of that thing? That'd be like a baseball. Anyway, the idea was, we even find this on Mount Everest, 29,000 feet high. Why? Because the mountains were formed during the flood. And that's the biggest evidence. There's no way you could have water cover something 29,000 feet. The mountains were formed during the flood. So what happened was you had all the flood activity, and then the mountains pushed up because of the collisions of all those tectonic plates. And that's what formed the mountain ranges. Make sense? How are we doing? You guys with me? Okay, good. All right, and we even have soft tissue in dinosaurs. This is from a Triceratops. You can see it's still stretchy, so how could it be millions and millions of years old if it's still soft tissue? Again, we're going to talk a lot more about that. But they have actually found 15 different types of soft tissues in fossils that are supposed to be millions of years old. And this isn't just in creation magazines, by the way. These are in secular, non-creationist journals, over 50 peer-reviewed articles about them. So question, how could soft tissues like blood vessels and collagen and things like that be preserved for 70, 80, 90, 500 million years? The answer is they're not that old, okay? All right, number 6, our ability to conduct observational science. So in Colossians, we read that Jesus created everything, and that in him, he holds everything together. So God is very much involved in his creation. We live in a universe that is bound by certain physical laws, okay? We know that these laws, law of gravitation, laws of thermodynamics, we study those in high school, in college, and whatnot. These are called laws because we can count on them. We can test and build theories upon these because they are what we would call fact, okay? So now observational science is science that operates in the present, like if we do experiments and test things in here and now. And the key feature is that it's testable and repeatable. So if you do baking soda and vinegar and shake it up and uncork it, what's going to happen? You're going to make a big mess. What happens if you do it again? Your mom or wife gets very grouchy with you for making a mess, and you got to clean it up. No, seriously. But the idea is that it's repeatable, it's testable, and it's responsible for many of the technologies that we have today. Just a few examples. So let's suppose that the universe is random, that there are no physical laws that are the same. Could we ever do an experiment and get the same result? The answer is no. We might not. So we would not be able to harness this type of science. So because God has created the universe and he does have these physical laws in place, we can leverage those and learn about the universe that he created. My definition of science is figuring out what God did and looking at all the different creatures. That's my definition of science. That's really what it's all about, is discovering truths about the Creator and what he did. All right. Almost there. Number 7, the amazing human ear. This is one of the most astonishing systems in the body. So, You start out with sound waves, and then you've got these little tiny eardrum bones in the ear that convert it to a mechanical. And then we go into, and it amplifies the signal. And then it goes into a hydraulic system. And then it goes into a chemical electrical. And then it goes into a chemical. You've got all these different parts of the ear that are taking that signal, the sound waves, and transmitting it to your brain. And they're all calibrated to send the signal accurately, okay? And there are some features in there that help protect us. If you get an extremely loud sound like a gunshot, okay, near you, your ear actually has mechanisms in it to to minimize the damage, the permanent damage that's done. So let's think about that. The nearest analogy I can come to is your car. You've got electrical in your car, you've got hydraulics in your car, you've got electronics in your car, you've got all mechanical, you've got everything in your car, and it all has to work together to go forward. The ear is the same way. It all has to work together. You can't have just one piece for it to work. Does that make sense? So the question for my friends who don't believe in God is, okay, explain to me, please, how all these things evolved to work together to produce the result they do. It takes a lot of faith to believe that that happened. It really does. All right, and of course, the human eye. So one of the things one of the studies, I did lighting research for the Sacramento Municipal Utility District for SMUD before I retired. Yay! I'd love to say that, 10 days ago. And one of the things that we did is we studied in the research program how lighting can help students with autism. We're actually going into people's homes and helping them set up really smart lighting systems that help the kids really get through their daily routines, sleep better, and so on and so forth. So I got to know just a little bit about the eye, not a lot. I'm not a doctor or anything, but I did learn a little bit about it. We have receptors for, how many have heard of rods and cones? Okay, we actually have these receptors in there that were discovered in 2003 that sense what time of day it is and will regulate your digestive system, your sleep hormones, your wake hormones, all of that. And blind people have it too. So it's this receptor that they discovered that has nothing to do with vision. It has everything to do. So the eye is incredibly complicated. And then it's got these zonule fibers. Like, what in the world is that all about? What that does is it actually, these fibers surround the lens, and what they do is they move the lens in and out so that you can see distance or close very quickly. So you have all these different systems, and of course the eyes have electrical and so on and so forth. So once again, we have these amazing features that are right there in front of us that clearly say, I was designed. All right, number 9. We got 10 to do, we're almost there. Irreducibly complex features. How many have heard of the mousetrap analogy? Basically, you have to have all the pieces of the mousetrap or it doesn't work. All the pieces have to be there at the same time, okay? Well, here's one, much more complicated. Which evolved first? Was it the heart, the blood, or the veins? They all have to be present for our circulation system to work. So did they evolve together? Or were they designed, were they created as a fully functioning system? We talked about blood clotting earlier. That's part of this too. All of these amazing things. So it's no wonder God says, hey, 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 look at what I made, and you'll look up at me, and you'll find me. All right, and here is a fun little creature. So this is a juvenile plant hopper, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Okay, but this guy is famous for one thing. Now, the babies, they can jump, and I think it's 30 milliseconds, and they can jump up to 100 times their body length. So let's think about this. That is faster than electrical impulses. So the brain says jump, and it's got to communicate to the muscles in each of the legs at the exact same time, so he goes what? That way. If this one communicates faster than that one, he goes or runs into something anywhere where he wants to go. So how does this little guy do that? Glad you asked. So they looked under electron microscope and they found this interesting feature. I'll make it bigger here for you. What are those? Those are called gears. There are actually gears in this little guy's legs. that when one moves, the other one moves automatically. So, somebody please tell me how that evolved, because I can't figure it out. That looks designed to me. In fact, what some evolutionists will say is you have to remember when you're looking at things, it only looks designed, it evolved. So it's not a question about evidence. It's not a question about who has more facts or who's right and wrong. It's really a heart issue. People don't want to believe in God. I hate to say that, but honest seekers usually come to the answer down the road. They'll say, okay, there is a creator. Now, I may not agree with you on who it is or but to look at these things is just good old-fashioned pride, just saying, you know what? They start out by saying there is no God, but we have creatures like this, therefore it evolved. Does that make sense? It's a philosophical commitment to not believing in God that leads them to say things like, this evolved all by itself without any creator. I think that makes God sad. It makes me sad, by the way. All right. Number 10. This is evidence, things that can be clearly seen. All right, so one of my kid pictures got in here. I apologize for that, but I love dog and cat pictures. How many have dogs? Dogs rule, cats drool. Oh, sorry, did I say that? Anyway, so God said that he made everything according to it. What's the word in yellow there? Help me out. According to its kinds. It's mentioned many, many times in the early part of Genesis as well as in the flood account. This phrase, according to their kinds. So what in the world is a kind? Now, there are a lot of really super smart people that are trying to figure that out because it's not that obvious sometimes. Some of them are, like we have the dog kind and the cat kind and different kinds. And then we have genetic variation. We have different species within those kinds. We have different types of cats, different types of dogs, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is we have these kinds, and the animals will vary within that kind, but they will never jump from one kind to another. You do not see a cat becoming a giraffe. You do not see a dog becoming a butterfly or a dragon or anything. They stay within the boundaries that God gave them. Now, Answers in Genesis, I'll give them a quick plug. They have an Ark Encounter. Anybody ever been to the Ark Encounter? It's absolutely amazing. It's a full-size replica of the Ark. Bring some comfortable shoes because you're going to do a lot of walking. But one of the things that they have are the hypothetical kinds, the ancestors. And again, they're doing this based upon DNA and different studies. But some of the animals will kind of surprise you going, okay, never heard of that. But again, this is an area of studying. But over and over again, this is what we see. Now, what our kids are being taught in public schools is that Darwinian evolution is where everything came from, that time plus chance equals life. All right? But the problem with that is to go from goo to the zoo to you, we need information. We need all this information on how to build legs, how to build arms, how to build eyeballs and ears and head and shoulders, finger, toes, all that stuff, right? We need information on how to do that. And what some really super scary smart people keep saying over and over again is that information always comes from an intelligence. All life comes from life, the law of biogenesis. So again, that's why in Romans God says, this is foolishness for you to look anywhere but up when you start looking at all these creatures. So, by the way, this is kind of fun. Anybody lucky out there? You feel pretty lucky? You always win Monopoly or whatever you play at home, okay? So the chances of particles to people evolution is like throwing a 6 on a dice 5 million times in a row. Those are the mathematical odds. That was calculated by an evolutionist named Sir Fred Hoyle. Okay? So this is what people that believe that everything created itself are actually buying into, are these crazy odds. Put it another way, it's the same odds as having a tornado go through a junkyard and make an airplane. Anybody want to fly on that one? Me neither. Okay. So the evidence is there for those who have open hearts that will seek the Lord. Now, the reason that we're going through this today is not so that you can go whoop up on somebody in an argument over coffee or on Facebook or whatever, right? It's so that you feel confident in your faith. My goal, what I always tell the kids that I teach, is my goal is not for you to be the smartest kid in the room. My goal is for you to feel so confident in your faith that you will share Jesus Christ with others without being ashamed, and that you will be equipped so that you can answer some of the legitimate questions. Now, we get about 6,000 questions a year on our internet page. It's actually gone up quite a bit. Some are genuine seekers. Most are trolls that just want to waste your time and try to drag you down and just, they're not honest seekers. And one of the things that we will do is we'll send somebody a free book and say, read it and call us back. And we can tell right away those that were just trying to argue and don't really seek. So kind of interesting. All right, almost done here. So rather than this evolutionary tree of life that a lot of us have been taught, think of it this way: the creation orchard of life. And you got the Orchard Church going here, so this is an easy one for you to remember. God created things according to their kinds, and then what happens is they do adapt to certain environmental conditions. They reproduce. It's like, look at all the different types of dogs that we have, okay? Largely because of human intervention. We want a little cute schnauzer, we put schnauzers together, right? But the idea here is that we do not believe, Christians, creationists, do not believe that everything is exactly the same as what it was when it was created. We believe that God created kinds, and there has been some change over time, okay? But we call it adaptation and genetic variation, not evolution. And it's used, and I'll do a talk sometime on looking at that mechanism. It's really quite amazing to see what's in it. All right, the bottom line is we can trust the Bible. Okay, so a little quick thing. I got some resources. We are a nonprofit, and we're really good at that. Our idea is we're tent makers. We use our individual jobs to fund the ministry and just push out stuff that we can. So we have these. I have partials out on the table. You can help yourself to these. If you want to make a donation, there's a can in there, but we don't charge anything, okay? But these are some training programs. The one on the left is 5th through 10th grade. There are 6 different lessons about different aspects that are taught in high school, public schools. And then there's student guides and then a DVD movie series. You can also get that for free online. You can download them in electronic format as well. And the videos are all there too. On the right, 11th grade through college, we address 7 myths that have cropped up. Things like, did Moses really write, the Pentateuch? And just different things that keep cropping up in the advanced college level. All right, we also have our answers book, 50 top answers. Now these are quickies. They're just little snippets of the, we kept getting the same questions over and over and over again. And I told my friend, I said, Dan, put it into a book, capture that so that we could just get it out there. And we can also, use those repeated questions. So, and then on YouTube, again, God has blessed us immensely. We have over 10 million views. And I give, and for this type of media, you can get 5 billion views on a cute dog or cat meme really easy, okay? But for creation materials and that type of stuff, this is God. This is really cool how he's using this format, okay? We have a free app. You can go to your app store and download. That'll give you access to the different resources as well. And then finally, a couple more. We actually put together 2 different things here. The Foundations is talking about, it's a brief movie looking at the implications for what you believe and how it impacts your choices down the road. The one on your left, Genesis Impact, the idea is we went to Natural Museum Histories and it broke our heart just to see all the stuff that seems to support evolution. So we made this movie. It has a lot of rebuttals to it. It's done in a movie-type fashion to where they're at a museum and they're interacting, that sort of thing. Again, the idea here is we're trying to equip people for the good work of spreading the gospel. Now, this is one that the Lord put on my heart. During COVID, I couldn't go to schools. Made me sad. God said, okay, well, I want you to bring your messages to the kids. I'm like, okay. I want you to build a little studio, and I want you to put your lessons online. Really, Lord? I hate cameras. I know you hate cameras, but you're going to do this. So my wife and I built this little tiny studio in our garage, and our goal is to make 72 different video lessons, 24 topics, and they are arranged and organized per age group. We've got it's all free. We've got the videos, we've got some handouts, we've got some games and puzzles, that sort of thing. There's the website. If you know anybody that you want to share that with, that would be really good. But I would love to hear some feedback. I don't hear a lot. It's relatively new. It's December. But I'd love to hear suggestions. You like it? You don't like it? You think, different things we could do better? I'm totally open to that. Whew, we made it. So again, the idea here is that it's not about being smarter. It's not about winning arguments. The best thing, 1 Peter 3:15 is my life verse. Always be prepared to give an answer to those that ask you about the hope that you have, but do so with gentleness and respect. All right? What's interesting about that verse, it presupposes that somebody is asking you a question. Always be ready to give an answer. That means somebody's asking you a question. Why are they asking you a question? Because hopefully we're living like Jesus Christ to the best of our ability. We're being kind and honest and hardworking and supportive and that sort of thing. And people know us for that, and they come to and go, why are you so different? And you point them to the Lord. And that's when the apologetics training to help answer legitimate questions. Now, when I was growing up, I was that kid that was asking a bunch of questions. Went to a private Catholic school. I'm not downing Catholics, but whenever I had to ask a question, I was told to sit down and shut up. Don't be disrespectful. And so by the time I got out of Catholic school and started going to public school, I was convinced that the Bible is just a bunch of nonsense. And actually, I'm ashamed to admit this, but I would go after my Christian friends in high school and just rip them to shreds because they didn't know what they believed, right? They just couldn't even answer basic questions. And I'm not happy about that, but I do have insights now that the Lord is using to help me communicate with others. So when I was 29, I gave my life to the Lord after a long period of just stiff-arming him, and I'm so glad that he didn't give up on me. So if you have people in your life that are out there that haven't given their lives, don't give up. Keep praying, keep going after him. Please share in love. And that's all I have today. Thank you very, very much. I will be here, obviously, for the next session, but if you have specific questions, I'll be hanging around for a bit after the Sunday school session to answer them. All right? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dave. We are blessed to have them with us today. And if you did not pick one of these up on the way in, you could get one in between our messages. But this has the QR code and all the information for the app for your phone. If you didn't get that, in the bulletin this morning where we would normally have sermon notes, there's a QR code there. You can scan that and go right to their website. So there's a bunch of ways that we've made this possible for you today. And we want to give, and we want to be generous. You heard all this stuff they're offering for free, right? Well, you know it's not free, right? It takes money, takes time, takes all of this to travel. And as a church, we want to be generous to them. And so anything that comes in undesignated today will go to them. And then anything that you have that you say, Genesis Apologetics or GA or donation or anything you say on there, we're going to give that to them as well. So we want to be able to fund that. I mean, think about all these, millions of views on YouTube, these free videos that they're offering. This is incredible. And so we want you to be extremely generous to help them in any way possible with that. And Dave will be available, and we'll start about 11:15, but we do have coffee coming over, and we'll have coffee in the lobby if you want to. There are lids for the cups. If you're going to come back in, we would appreciate you doing that. A couple things that are separate from this. Workday is coming up this coming Saturday. We have a ton of projects. We really could use your help. We'll feed you lunch, but we'll start at 8. If you can give us 30 minutes or an hour or 3 hours, we would love to have you come this coming Saturday for that. Our Fall Palooza, our Halloween outreach to the community is coming, and we need like a gazillion pounds of candy for that, and so you can begin to bring candy, begin signing up to help us. That would be helpful. The winter collection for the homeless, sleeping bags and socks, those are the two biggest things that we can use. Gail helped us with that. If you see a sleeping bag on sale, or you want to buy one or 2 or 3, or buy a pack of socks, that is huge, and so you can help us with that. Next Sunday, we're going to give you a lot more details about this, but we have been, since Pastor Paul left, we have been actually looking to replace that position, and we're really looking for a youth pastor. And in the first Sunday of October, we have a young man that'll be here with his family from Nebraska, candidating for that position. And we'll tell you a ton more about that next week, but we kind of want to give you a heads up that that's coming, and so we're thrilled about that. I don't know that I've missed anything else, but we got about 15 minutes till Sunday school. Tyler, if you could help us get the coffee. We'll have coffee in the lobby in just a few moments. Dan Hatzel's here. I know what that means. Come on up here. Is there a microphone he can use, Charles? Oh, you got one. Okay. All right. As soon as Dan's done, you're dismissed. Have a cup of coffee, hang out. Dave will be back in just a couple minutes for dinosaurs in the Bible, and I guess you're going to be available, Dave, for questions if people want to come up in between.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, the books, donation only. You can't beat that, and so buy up all the books that are out there.
Right now, I only have to do this twice a year, maybe next year 3, but it is Pastor Mark's birthday today. You don't look that old.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have a card for you from your church family. We do appreciate you. We love you, and we're glad you're here.
Amen.
So make sure today, say happy birthday to Mark. Show him you love him. We do appreciate everything he does right here.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you.